This is Bill Landis, Chairman of the Florida Minutemen. You're listening to American Patriots Radio with Jason W. Hoyt.
Thank you so much, Bill Landis from the Florida Minutemen. He's a great patriot. You know, there's kind of an inside joke there with Bill Landis. Every time we go to an event, every time we go to Tallahassee, we wonder how many Bill Landises are there. The guy is everywhere. He's really taking on the illegal immigration issue here in the state of Florida, doing a tremendous job. Welcome back to American Patriots Radio. My name is Jason W. Hoyt. You can learn more about the radio show at jasonwhoyt.com. That's H-O-Y-T, jasonwhoyt.com. If you want to be part of the program, it's 407-482-3776. That's 407-482-3776. Peggy's the snack czar back over here, gave me that sound bite there. That was a Toot Sweet coming in out of the break. Great patriot as well. I want to talk a little bit here about this Great Awakening and the educational awakening and really what it takes to peel back the layers, peel back the facade. You get to a point where you're so frustrated, you don't trust the media anymore, you don't trust politicians, you don't trust these political parties, and it seems like every 4 years, every 2 years we vote, and we're still heading in the same direction. And after a while, you get so frustrated, you get tired of throwing your shoes at the TV, and you don't know who to believe anymore. And you go through a process that's part of this awakening. And, you know, I've been through this process for several years. And again, I am not an expert here. I am a willing participant on a journey that it takes that spark of curiosity. Back at the end of 2003, 2004, I volunteered like mad with the Young Republicans. I joined the Young Republicans, joined the Republican Executive Committee. I volunteered for Bush Cheney because he was our guy. And back then we looked through that lens of R versus D. He was our guy, and we had to defend him at all costs because, you know, either that or it's the other guy. Lurch was his name. John Kerry, wasn't that his name? But since that time, thankfully with this Tea Party, we've been able to shrug off the R versus D mentality, and let's focus on some principles and values. And last year I met this guy named Matt White. He's got a website, universityofcommonsense.org. Brilliant guy. No pressure, Matt, but welcome to the show. And I want to thank you for coming in spite of your terrible morning.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
You want to tell me about your morning? I got up this morning, I look on Facebook, and I see a status update from you. Of course, you had to update your status.
Right. Yeah,
and what did you have to do at 3 or 4 this morning?
3:30 in the morning, I woke up with an excruciating pain in my side and felt that I was about to die. So I was going to try to kind of muscle through it, but I told my wife, I said, baby, we have to go to the hospital. This isn't going to go away.
Right.
But it turned out to be a kidney stone, what I suspected it would be, but it was awful.
Just think, a year from now, if we don't repeal Obamacare, you could go get your kidney stone removed and update your fishing license at the same time.
I was actually thinking about Obamacare sitting in the hospital.
Yeah.
It's hard not to think about, when you put things in that context. But I mean, I think politically anyway, just because of my interest. But
yeah, and now you're looking through this lens of principles and values, of the Constitution, of the proper role of government. You've shrugged off the R versus D mentality.
Right.
We've had extended discussions about that. We're going to try to cram some of that in a few minutes here. But tell me about your process. What was it? What was that spark? And how did you go through that? Because I really want to inspire people listening to say that there is another way. You don't have to just be subject to what Fox News tells you is the deal or what your local news tells you is going on.
Well, for me, I was considered myself to be a staunch conservative, and in many ways, I still am. I listened to the various, talking heads that we're supposed to listen to. Like you were saying earlier, when it came to the 2008 elections, I was firmly behind McCain, and I was firmly behind Bush before that.
McCain, that was Sarah Palin's running mate.
That was Sarah Palin. Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to put it.
The old guy.
Right, and I found it frustrating though because I was talking to some liberal friends, some people who were going to be voting for Obama, and they were kind of putting me in my place in a couple of things. They were kind of showing me my own hypocrisy.
Exactly.
And not that necessarily makes them right. It's not A or B necessarily, but
it's the lesser of two evils.
Well,
you have this choice or that choice,
and that's essentially what we were arguing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the frustration grew, and that angst was happening in me. But I had been introduced to a few ideas prior to McCain receiving the nomination through the debate process of the Republican nomination. And one particular candidate at the time caught my attention. A few of my friends were saying, the things that you say, I think you would like this guy. I think you would like this guy. Nah, he's crazy. He's crazy. But the guy was Ron Paul.
Right.
And I remember watching one debate in particular, and the moderator asked.
Now,
a
right
question.
away, I'm going to interrupt. Right
Sure.
away, when people hear that name, especially over here on the right, it's a polarizing name.
Right. Exactly. And that's. I guess it's the way it's been presented, and I guess the way that people receive it. I know that there are some supporters or whatnot that can turn him off, and it becomes really about Ron Paul.
But
it's
for
not,
you, it's not about
it's
him.
not about Ron Paul.
It's
It's
not about the man.
Right. It's about the principles that he was bringing forward. Really, I mean, he was talking about things that initially I thought were crazy. Ending the Department of Education. My initial thought was, wait a minute, what would we do without education? But
Right.
of
How
course,
are we going to teach our kids?
right, which of course is a terrible conclusion. It's a logical fallacy, and there were many other things that he said that I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. But the answer that he provided, though, to a really important question was, "Are you electable?" And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, what do you mean am I electable? I'm running in the Republican Party. I'm standing for what the Republicans used to stand for. They used to stand for getting rid of the Department of Education.
It used to be in the platform.
That used to be in the platform,
Right.
in the platform. And so he went through these, this list of basically what it meant to be a true Republican or true conservative. He said,
Right.
so for everybody that's standing up here, I'm the true conservative. And at first, I didn't know what to think about that, but it did stun me for a second.
Yeah.
Because I started thinking, wait, what if he's right? I mean, what if what he's saying that what he is standing for, the Republicans used to stand for? And so I just began digging. I just began reading. And I had never read the Constitution. As ridiculous as that was, I ran around saying, I'm a champion of the Constitution. I had never
Right.
read it.
Right.
I didn't know what the Declaration of Independence said. I knew the things that they tell you in high school or whatever else, but I had never
Those
read it.
two sentences that you had to memorize for the test on Friday.
Exactly.
And the next week you forget about it.
But that really spawned an entire journey, and it's not about Ron Paul. I didn't get entrenched in a bunch of Ron Paul stuff. I didn't I began actually just researching everything for myself. I decided
Right.
that the more that I learned, the more I realized that the less I knew.
You peel back the layers of that onion.
Yeah.
And it got uglier and uglier on the inside
Exactly.
of what the talking points are that you get from, and you're just able to shrug all that off.
Well, I decided that I'm just going to start over. Period. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to do this on my own. I'm going to
Right.
research this for myself.
Right.
I'm not going to rely on my public education. I'm not going to rely on what some demagogue is telling me.
Was it hard to shrug off that public education propaganda?
It was, though, because there were certain things that I came across as far as history that is untold by anybody, really. I mean, it's really dusted under the rug. But you get to certain points and you go, wait a second, this is mind blowing. I can't believe that
Right.
this is the way it was, or this is what was
Right.
intended.
Yeah.
A good example of this was actually the original intent of the United States Bill of Rights. The original intent was not for them to be applied against all governments all over the country. It was
Right.
actually to be applied against the federal
Wait,
government.
doesn't the
only.
Bill of Rights just tell us what our rights are?
Exactly, and a lot of people think that way, and it
Right.
kind of bothers me. People say, I have a First Amendment, I have a Second Amendment. No, you don't have a First Amendment right.
You
or
have a
Second Amendment.
natural
You have a
right.
natural right, and that's much
Yeah.
more powerful than any parchment could ever deliver.
Right.
The parchment is there to just say, look, this is what the government can do,
Right.
and then the Bill of Rights, because it was applied to the federal government, actually says it in the preamble what its purpose
we're
was.
getting kind of wonkish out
Right.
here, but when we first say in the Declaration our rights come from God, and then we say in the Constitution they list our first 10 rights.
Right. But all is that to say that was something that was, for me, mind-blowing.
Right.
It was something
Right.
that I wasn't going to learn in public education. And it's something that nobody really talks about. And whether you agree with that or not, it changed everything for me as far as learning original intent. What did the founders originally intend for the various roles of government? And it's huge. You have to understand that. If you don't, you're just kind of walking around aimlessly.
And the
quite
little
frankly.
spark that happened initially, that seed, if you will, is curiosity.
Right.
You got to a point where you're like, I don't really believe what I'm hearing out here.
Right.
Now I'm curious, and now I have to do it myself.
Correct.
It's that personal responsibility element that you have to do things yourself.
Right.
And and in the Declaration, when it says that your rights come from God, I believe personally the second most important section or sentence in there says that, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. To secure our rights, that's the proper role of government. That's it. We're naturally free. We just said that. And to secure our rights is why we hire the government. And now look at all the stuff they're doing. Look at all the stuff on top of that. It is mind-blowing and sad. And there's a few things that we're going to talk about. We have a few minutes left in this segment, and we will be talking about these later. today, but also especially the coming weeks and months. I want to have this long conversation here, and not to get too wonkish. Obviously, it's we got to be informational, a little bit entertaining. But I'm telling you, we can't get too far in the weeds. But you got to get to a point where you're like, I need this information.
Right.
People have to be curious. For example, we've talked often about the budget, the Ryan budget, and the frustrations we have with. I think Paul Ryan and a lot of Republicans are expending a lot of political capital on this Ryan budget, and I'm telling you, part of this awakening is that we realize it's not about one man, it's not about one administration. The awakening we've come to realize we've been heading in the wrong direction for 100 years, and later on we'll talk about 1913, a very bad year in America. So 99 years we've been heading in the wrong direction, even longer than that. But the point is that we've got to be heading in the right direction. I do believe there's an awakening going on. Would you agree?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any optimism at all? I know you and I have these conversations. You're a little snarky, a little pessimistic.
Well, it's a matter of where your faith is, and I look at the example of the founders. They didn't try to save Britain. They didn't go around doing that. They just stood where they were and they said, "Look, I'm a free man, all right, and so this is where I'm going to stand my ground." So they didn't try to overtake the king. They didn't try to do any of this. They just stood where they were and they said, I'm going to be free.
Right.
And I think that's a good example for us to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah. Well, so the Ryan budget, again, it doesn't, these guys, they talk in 10-year terms. We're gonna cut $2 trillion. Obama says, we're going to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Over 10 years, he's talking about a cut from an increase. The natural baseline budget is an increase in 7% every year. It's going to increase. So he says we're going to cut. It's actually going to be a natural increase of 6% or some ridiculous, stupid number.
Right.
Anyways, this is American Patriots Radio. This is Jason W. Hoyt. Coming up, we're going to talk to a couple of heroes in the Tea Party movement here locally. Stick with us, American Patriots Radio.